We spent a long time looking for an eyewitness, but Bigfoot sightings seem to have been very scarce in Oregon lately. So after days of diligent effort, it came down to one man, Chris Johnson of rural Stayton. Hi, Chris.
Jim?
Yeah. Hi.
It's me.
Nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you.
Now, Chris is a deer and elk hunter who doesn't believe in guns.
It's murder. To me, it is, anyway.
Well, do you think there's a connection between your using a bow and arrow, which is silent, and your seeing the Sasquatch?
More than likely, because I was the only one there. And during rifle season, there's usually all kinds of hunters everywhere.
And that would spook any large animal, I imagine.
Totally. Yeah. I'm sure of it.
We take off, Chris and the photo crew, searching not so much for Sasquatch as Sasquatch country. It is that rough land where big, hairy things muck around waterhole mud, leaving footprints to be discovered. It is where Bigfoot stares down bow hunters in the twilight. That, Chris claims, was his experience. He'll show us the spots.
There's where we're going, right up in that V. I wish the clouds weren't there, because there used to be that old lookout tower up there for the Forestry Service.
As we climb, those clouds come down to meet us, tumbling slow motion like some lighter-than-air avalanche, and mist becomes rain.
Well, your driver's going to have a thrill here in just a little bit. Oh, yeah. We're coming to the end of our pavement here.
It could as well have been a creek bed, this road that replaced the pavement. Our Ford LTD seems a little vulnerable, its oil pan so close to the spiked rocks in the road. We're out in the middle of nowhere now.
Yeah, more or less.
We'd never find it, you know. Sure. Our ordeal, while maybe not really so terrible, turns our thoughts to Bigfoot, who endures wet weather without even a tent.
I imagine like any other wild animal out, like bears or anything.
Yeah, they can handle it cold, I guess, huh? In the wet?
I imagine, a bear, what does a bear do?
What does a bear do?
I don't know what a bear does. It gets wet, I imagine.
Our first destination. Too wet now.
Oh, then you like it quit.
It was here last year that Chris and Lana found 18-inch footprints.
I'm surprised this is so full. I didn't expect this.
The prints were so impressive. A Seattle Sasquatch expert came all the way down here to take pictures and plaster casts. The expert, Cliff Crook, said the tracks were some of the best he'd seen.
Because you could just see the tracks as they went right through the water. You could just see where their footprint had been in the pool.
They just ignored the water,
yeah,
walked right through it.
Went right through it. It was funny. Maybe they were taking a bath. It was hot.
But it grows later in the day, and so we push on. The mist has become thicker. It is a shifting screen on which to project our fantasies of what might be hidden by it. Sometimes we stop just to enjoy the silence.
Did you hear that? I thought I heard something. You never know what you can hear up here.
No, we hadn't heard anything. But Chris, who has worked as a tree cutter in the forest since he was 15, may have better ears for it. He told us before we left the house that he has heard things in the deep woods.
Well, I've heard a few screams.
Strange sounds in the woods?
At night, some screams. Because we used to stay up there every now and then.
Couldn't have been a cat of some kind?
No,
But we hear no screams, maybe a tree frog and a bird. And the labyrinth of backwoods logging roads winds through canyons, sometimes dropping 1,000 feet, then forcing us to climb again. What did his face look like?
Rather dark. It was rather, the hair was darker.
Chris describes the Sasquatch he saw, his Bigfoot, and the creature occasionally caught on film, those shaky home movie images familiar to us all, sounds the same. Scientists disagree about whether a family of man-like apes could be living undetected in U.S. forests, but sightings like Chris's have been reported for hundreds of years. So how much farther is it?
Just right through here.
Just right through here. It is very late in the day when we arrive at the place where Chris says he saw the Sasquatch.
Is it a day like this? Yeah, more or less. Evening like this resembles it a lot.
Like it was getting dark.
See that stump?
Yeah?
Sitting on that stump, and I was seeing him right over there. And I was just sitting there looking for elk and watching that line of trees. Noticed this big hairy thing just sitting down on the ground with its back up against the butt of the tree.
Chris gets chills even now, he says, when he thinks of it. It is the kind of feeling you might get seeing those Sasquatch films if you really believed the creature shown was real.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I can still vision the day I was sitting there, looking over there just going, oh man, is this thing gonna get up and move on me?
But we don't see anything but the thick trees. So we head home, stopping by the road a moment to watch the last rays of sunlight leave the sky. The clouds covering the slopes look angry, and they hide a lot. And we still don't know what a Sasquatch does or what a bear does when the weather is wet and miserable and the creature can't come in out of the rain.
Now, before you scoff too loudly at Chris's sighting of Sasquatch, you should know that there are a few serious research scientists who also believe Bigfoot exists. Grover Krantz is one of them. He's an associate professor of anthropology at Washington State University. He's teaching at OSU this year. Dr. Krantz told Jim Newman that he has solid evidence that Sasquatch is no myth.
I have met 70 people, talked to them, who claim to have seen one. And the current assessment of it is that about 30 of them can be ruled out as having made mistakes, been fooled by somebody, they're lying about it, or they saw so little that nothing could be based on it. The others, 40 out of the 70, slightly over half, I can't find any flaw, any motive, anything wrong with the story, and I think I believe them.
Professor Grover Krantz is a celebrity of sorts, though it's true his fame does not come directly from his academic achievements. Championing Bigfoot is not a popular pursuit in educational circles. By training, Krantz is a physical anthropologist, a visiting professor at Oregon State University. Scattered bones yield to his knowledge of the human skeleton, and he teaches student archaeologists where the fragments belong. But an anthropologist thinks about culture and about evolution, too.
Since the Sasquatch, or Bigfoot, has essentially all the characteristics of an oversized gorilla, with only one exception, walking on two legs, that makes us suspect that since bipedalism, walking on two legs, was the first event here, that they divided off from the human line at something around here. That is, they're a little bit closer to us in terms of actual biological relationship because they share the one characteristic that occurred here, bipedalism.
A theory that the Bigfoot is a branch or two below us on the family tree may be eccentric, but Krantz refuses to buckle to peer pressure from doubting fellow anthropologists. Grover Krantz says his colleagues are just overly cautious.
I'm a little bit naive. I always assumed that science was the investigation of the unknown. I find out that, of course, most science is just working out minor details of what is known. They don't want to get into the real unknown. So, but I did, and so I got into this.
Dr. Krantz's acceptance of Bigfoot began in 1970 when he examined footprint molds said to be from the creature. His knowledge of anatomy, he says, convinced him he was seeing foot impressions left by an 800-pound animal, and the specimen in question had a distinctive injured foot.
The axis of the foot is obviously very much twisted. Well, I did some reconstructing from the positions of these bulges that must have been over cartilage, which came out of the bone swellings. So I could locate the various bones in the foot, and I could tell where, within a few millimeters, where the center of weight in the ankle was located.
His calculations satisfied him the footprint could not have been a fake. The plaster casts also yielded impressions of dermal ridges like fingerprints. Forensics experts, Krantz says, are convinced they are real. Only a Sasquatch skeleton might convince the multitude of doubters who consign his theory to limbo on the far fringe of accepted science. What are the chances that within your lifetime, do you think, one will be brought down or collected in some way?
That's sort of like asking, what are the chances that within my lifetime you're going to get killed in an auto crash? It's one of these totally unpredictable things.